Hi, welcome back to another episode of Madness and Meaning. And we've got a really interesting conversation that we want to talk about today. We're going to be exploring spirituality from different angles. Both Kelly and I, entered the spiritual space at different points in time, but I don't think that we've been an integral part of the community for a very long time. I think it's relatively new for both of us. And we have certain observations that we've kind of witnessed and been exploring for ourselves that we want to open up for a bigger conversation between the two of us and also our community at large. And I'm going to let Kelly kind of dive in with where she wants to take this to start, because I think this is going to be a really interesting exploration of some of what we've witnessed and some things that we haven't seen spoken about anywhere else.
Yeah, I feel like this topic, more than any of our other topics, is going to be very much so an exploration for ourselves. I guess I can speak for myself as far as feeling like every other topic that we've done, I feel like we can angle it as far as some kind, like we're speaking from some level of authority around it. Like we have some very strong opinions or like points that we want to kind of teach in the podcast. And when I'm thinking about this one and kind of coming to it, I feel like it's very much like I kind of want to figure out where I stand
Yeah.
on all of this through the conversation. And as we've been kind of opening ourselves up to this topic, because we came up with it last week to talk about it. And then we ended up talking about something else in that podcast recording. So now it's been like a week of kind of feeling into what even is this topic and like what do I have to contribute to it. And I've come to a place of feeling like I don't know if there's much I can pre-plan contributing to it. I just kind of want to feel into what my experience of coming into the spiritual space has really been and what I have felt hasn't been aligned, I guess, as far as what I've discovered and the process and the different things that I've been exposed to in the spiritual community. And the way that I've been contexting it over the last 24 hours since listening to an audiobook um, is kind of in the ways of which spirituality has started to have similar qualities that I have found myself not resonating with in other religions. And so my background is being raised in a Christian family. And there were always aspects of that, that even from like a very young age, I just was like, no, like this is just not for me. And it was very much all of having to do with there being like this um figure of authority that is supposed to like tell you whether something is good or bad. And like there's a lot of fear mongering in it as well, as far as like if you're not this enough, then something bad is going to happen to you. And if, you can have everything that you want as long as you meet these expectations. And if you don't have everything that you want and need, it's because you're not being the way that you're supposed to be and you're not being godly enough or you're not repenting for your sins enough or whatever. Whatever version of that you want to, like, I don't know, I was a kid, so I don't really know how I interpreted it. I just know that I didn't like it. And as I came into kind of learning my own version of spirituality and coming up with or reconnecting back with some kind of higher power of some sort, spirituality was kind of the way that I found my way in that resonated for the first time ever. And I think that was because the essence of spirituality, at least when I was coming into it and reading books like the Four Agreements and the Untethered Soul, were kind of like my introductions into these things. It felt so much more grounded in the essence of love and acceptance and just like feeling like there wasn't as much expectation on me to have to be a certain way in order to adhere to this way of being in the world. And as I've been more and more exposed to the spiritual community, I've started to find similar manifestations of that fear mongering and that like level of authority that just always felt kind of inauthentic and manipulative that I also kind of felt and didn't resonate with in my experiences of religion growing up. So I feel like that's kind of where I want to angle in at
Yeah.
first, is like this level of like kind of it feels like manipulation and like fear mongering a lot in the spiritual community.
As soon as I entered the spiritual space, I recognized the fear. It was so tangible. And I was wondering myself, why is everyone so afraid of everything? And it really did feel like afraid of everything.
Mm.
And that was so shocking to me. I come from a Jewish background, and the idea of angels and demons and dark forces doesn't really exist in the Jewish tradition. But I never considered myself Jewish. Growing up, as a child, I did not identify with religion at all. I didn't identify with Judaism. So I considered myself an atheist. And as an atheist, there definitely does not exist any, light and dark, good and bad. Everything was just biology that either existed or ceased to exist. And then all of a sudden, there was all these conversations around ways to be, ways not to be, what to be afraid of, what to work towards, and a very hierarchical level of thinking too, in terms of beings that are above you in evolution. The idea that enlightenment is better than to be not enlightened. 5D and 4D are better than 3D. People that have spiritual gifts are more evolved than those who do not. Um, you know, don't touch certain people because you might, absorb some of their energy, and you don't want to, absorb their energy if their energy is not good, or there might be evil beings in your house that are affecting your energy, or you don't want to feel certain emotions because it's going to lower your vibration and then you won't be able to manifest what you want. And it became this like, I couldn't leave the house unless I spent 20 minutes making certain intentions and boundaries. And I found myself being afraid of everything. And it took me back to this childhood place of fear that I hadn't felt for a very long time, or this disempowering feeling of I'm not good enough. I have to
Yeah.
be better than this. This version of me is not good enough. I'm not worthy of ascension. I'm not worthy of enlightenment. I don't have all of these crazy spiritual gifts. And so
Mhm.
I noticed that too. And it made me very uncomfortable. And I started to explore why that might be. And the conclusion that I came to is that the ego follows you.
Mhm.
Spirituality is not an escape from your own ego or your own fear of who you are and your own unworthiness. And when you haven't unraveled some of your own stuff, your shadow parts, they will follow you and be projected on whatever your belief system is. And so I would love your take on that.
Yeah. And I feel like in the spiritual community, people have started creating dialogue around that in a way that's still very egoic. Like people talk
Yes.
about the spiritual ego from a very egoic
From an
place.
egoic place, right? Like if you don't
Yes.
do your shadow work, then you're not gonna, you're not gonna ascend. You're not gonna be able to access your intuition, and it just kind of like manifest this. It's feeding into the same fear
Yes.
or
Yes.
insecurity.
Yeah. There's been one space I have found in the spiritual community that has always very strongly resonated with me because it felt like it took all of the good aspects of the essence of spirituality and the essence of really all religions when it comes to like love without all of that like ego manipulation fear stuff. And it was probably the first time I'm going to introduce it, but not the last time, Kyle Cease. Because when he speaks about these things, it's always from a place of genuinely loving and embracing the ego. And that is just such a generalization of what it is because I didn't really know how to put into
There's a
words what it is.
neutrality to it. That's what
Yes.
I've noticed. When I talk to my guides and they give me information, it's neutral. There's no like there's no attachment to this is better than that. This is ahead of that. There's no, the ego loves to compartmentalize ahead, behind, better, worse, success, failure. That is a construct of your own perspective.
Yes.
And when you haven't taken the time to deconstruct that for yourself, you're going to project it onto
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, religion, whatever it is. And I also want to preface this by saying that I am not shaming those who have not seen this yet. I am simply reflecting back my own observations. And I don't look
Yes.
down on anybody. I think it's a very natural progression of your own personal development work to not
Mm-hmm.
realize these things and then slowly start to realize them. And I was there too. I went through that myself. And so I want to put that out there that we're just observing.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting how like we can pick up on other people might interpret us saying like labeling things as good and bad or right and wrong. That's bad, right? Like we're almost like
Yeah,
creating our perception
right.
of that's also in a box. And isn't
Thank
that
you.
funny
Thank
how
you
we're
for that
always doing that?
reflection, Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of people would automatically interpret it and how we're also being careful not to interpret it that way as well. This is why we're having this conversation. And I think they're like, how do we even portray accessing that level of like, that's also neutral? Like judging and putting things into a box and seeing things as right or wrong, good and bad, better than, less than, etc. That's also like I always like to when I'm portraying this to other people or teaching them this experience of neutrality, I always come to, isn't that cute that we
Yeah.
do that? And I find that
So
that is my
innocent.
access way in. Yeah, it's all so innocent. It's so well intentioned and it's so misguided.
Yes. Well intentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it took me a very long time to let go of the idea that something was not right or wrong, or that there was no one answer or truth. And I remember when I first started to be able to hear my spirit guides arguing with them, like, because I kept wanting them to validate things for me and they weren't. And that was so frustrating because I was searching for something that didn't exist. And essentially, what I was searching for was either a validation of my worth or a validation of my unworthiness.
Yes.
I wanted them to just give me a validation of one or the other so I could know how to feel about myself. And I think that a lot of that comes back to that is, what is your ego essentially searching for and how is it looking to find what it wants?
Mm. I think an interesting offer that I want to give those listening that I'm also like kind of tuned into this way of experiencing this conversation is just seeing where I automatically judge something as good or bad. Like even hearing your reflection of, oh, I was looking for validation of my worthiness or validation of my unworthiness. There was like this automatic experience of like, oh, we don't want to be doing that. That's not good. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's this the manifestation of the same thing. Like it just it comes in so many layers.
So what's the answer?
What's the question?
And I think that that comes back to the fact that we're always searching for it. We're searching
Right.
for some answer that we can ground into so that we know where we stand, or we know,
Yes.
okay, where do I go from here? And I think that that for me is what spirituality is just self-exploration. There,
Mm-hmm.
without the need to get to a specific outcome, because the outcome is not the point. The point is the experience of the journey. And
Yes.
I think that requires a certain degree of acceptance and openness of what your current experience of yourself is, which is where a lot of the discomfort comes in. is that we're
Mm-hmm.
not inherently comfortable inside of who we are. And so we're looking to change who we are. And we're using spirituality or aspects of religion to help us come to a place of self-acceptance that we're not feeling inherently worthy of or capable of.
Yeah. And the only reason why we resist our own self-acceptance, this is my interpretation of it at least. I don't know if this is an overall rule, but to me, it feels like if I were to radically accept myself as I am, then I could be proven wrong, and that would be really painful. Like there's this like inherent, like even acceptance feels like I could be doing that wrong. Like what if I accept a part of myself that is generally decided as unacceptable? Then that's going to result in a lot of shame. It's going to result in the pain of rejection or abandonment. And really all of this comes down to an overall deep, incessant need to avoid pain, which is not it. Again, I'm making that wrong. It's interesting how like I could say that and then like, oh, I shouldn't be avoiding pain. I should embrace it. Like there's so many layers of spirituality
Right.
where we have like what we think is like a higher perspective on things. And I think it is guiding us in a good direction, but then there's limits to it too. Like there's really great aspects to learning how to accept myself and not like trying to avoid pain all of the time and seeing that there's gifts in pain and like that's what I came here to do and like there's all these higher perspectives on all of this. And then when I'm not living up to that or I'm not
Yeah.
living as if that's true
Yeah.
or I am like avoiding pain or I'm feeling resistant to it or I'm like afraid of owning my inherent worth and that's wrong. Like it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
The the like the absent if you make the absence of wrongness the goal, then on some degree you're wronging yourself,
Yes.
right? And so again, I think that there is no answer here. It's just an exploration. And I feel like this is a great kind of segue into a really fascinating conversation that I've had with my guides that has really opened up my perspective to see myself in the world around me through a very different lens, which is that everything is a projection of your own thoughts and belief systems. Everything, everything. There is no one truth. There is only perspective. And when you think about it, your entire reality is a byproduct of your belief systems. And there is no one that is better than the other. There is just your experience of them. And I guess this kind of brings us back to what is the experience you want to be having in this moment. And that's where you can pick and choose the direction that you take it. And then in the next moment, you might desire a different experience. And then you can pick a different direction. And it's just kind of the flow in and out, back and forth, that is the purpose of being here, is the ability to experience all of it and not
Mm-hmm.
believe that one is the experience that you should be having over another.
Yes. Yeah. There's been moments where I have really accessed that, like allowing myself to experience all of it. And like that being, there's something that resonates so deeply with me on a level that I can only explain as soulful when I connect with the idea that all of it could be amazing. Like the deepest sadness, the deepest grief, or the experience of like fully hating myself. There's a resonance when I connect with it of like, cool, I get to experience that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, oh, I get to experience like deeply hating myself.
Yeah.
It's not, it's so easy to make it wrong, but there's almost a weird, it's hard to explain, but it's like something enjoyable about that too.
Yeah. It's like you're giving yourself permission to just be who you are.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah.
explore why or how sometimes spirituality makes that wrong,
Yeah.
like the
I think this comes
experience of
to
you.
the experience of you being wrong.
Well, what were you going to say?
Well, I was thinking about um, something that you mentioned earlier when we were talking before the podcast of, and I don't know if this applies here, but this is how I immediately interpreted what you were saying, is that feeling our low vibrational emotions makes us low vibrational or something like that. I feel like that's the lens of which I just interpreted what you're saying, because spirituality makes these experiences of shame or being insecure or not loving ourselves, aka experiencing self-hatred or self-loathing or fear, wrong, because it's associated with having experiences that we don't want to have, because you're lowering your vibration. If you feel these things, you're going to have a lower vibration, and then lower vibrational experiences are going to continue to happen. It's very fear-based, and I think there's an essence to it that does hold some truth, as far as what it's trying to say is what you're experiencing internally is going to be reflected out into your reality. But then it takes that and it's like, so then don't have these realities. You have
Right.
to change how you feel internally. And I think that that's where it starts to get steered in the wrong direction, because it's not about trying to control all of your experiences. That's like the assumption that gets made in spirituality and with the law of attraction. It's like you can control everything, and so you should
Right.
control everything. Raise your vibration. Don't think negative thoughts, blah, blah, blah. But without that expectation that we're supposed to do something with it and control it, then there's just kind of a settling into the awareness of, oh, what I'm experiencing externally is just reflecting or mirroring something inside of me. Without needing to do something about that, it's just that almost starts to feel like that's enough.
That's exactly where I was going with that. And I love the way you spoke about that. And I I would like to take this opportunity to add a little bit of nuance to the idea that your experience of an emotion affects your vibration, because that's not entirely true. And I just want to preface this by saying that this is my perspective. I'm not necessarily correct because there is no one right answer, but this is the explanation that my spirit guides have given me um, to talk about this with a little bit more nuance. They're laughing at me right now. They're telling me I'm being a little too ticky-tack with this and to just say it. So I'm just going to say it. Um, Let's take fear, for example. Fear is a lower vibrational emotion, it's a denser energy. And so the common misconception is that if you feel fear, you lower your vibration, and then you can't manifest what you want, and you can't ascend to the fourth dimension or whatever the case may be. And that's not entire, that there's a little bit of nuance missing there. And the way I've come to understand it is that having an experience of an emotion does not affect your vibration because you are not the emotion you're experiencing. So you can have an experience of a low vibrational emotion and just allow it to pass through you and not be affected by it. Like the essence of you is not affected by it unless you make the experience mean something about you. Again, everything is a projection, and the thoughts and belief systems about you create your reality. That's what the saying, we are divine creators, that's what that means. And so when you're feeling fear, if you're making that mean something like, I'm not worthy of what I want, I'm never going to be capable of what I want, people hate me, I'm not good enough, then fear is affecting your belief system about you. And your belief system about you is the reality of who you are. And that's what affects the essence of your vibration. And so, what it really comes down to is allowing yourself to have the emotional experience without attaching a meaning to your identity. And when we start to fear, by
Hmm.
telling yourself that I can't feel fear, because if I feel fear, then it means this about me, and I'm not going to be able to raise my vibration. I'm not going to be able to manifest what I want. Then we're just exacerbating the very belief systems that are lowering our vibration in the first place.
Hmm.
I threw a lot at you, but I feel like that it's a distinction that has felt right to me, because never we're here to have an experience of being human, and to make it wrong to be who you are doesn't feel good to me, doesn't resonate for me.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I think that my first experience of learning this, or I guess coming back to the resonance of that, was when I started to get introduced to somatic work. And I was introduced to it in a way of like, kind of, I am just the container that's holding this feeling. And there's this saying, like, you get stuck with something when you identify with it or judge it, that we've both learned in a coaching program that we both took. And I resonate with that so deeply because I can feel anytime I'm moving through an experience that we can call low vibrational, like I'm feeling a lot of fear, anxiety, or I'm feeling a really low self-worth or self-hatred of myself. There's an automatic judgment of that, or there's an automatic like this means something about me, this is who I am, depending on the level of awareness I'm at. If I'm completely lost in it and I'm like unaware, like I can't even put words in my own head of I am feeling like low self-worth or I am feeling this, then it's just like that's who I am. Like I am just low self-worth, or I am just like fear. Like that experience of it is so it just it keeps me looping in it almost. Like it's I don't even know how to put words to it because it's such like an embodied thing. I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
I am that I
Um,
am, right?
yeah, yeah.
That what that means is I am all that is, and everything that was, and everything that ever will be. And I feel like I'm channeling this right now, and I feel like what I want to say around this is that we are all divine channels, but what clogs your channel are the belief systems that you hold around who you believe yourself to be, and what you believe yourself to be, and what you believe you're capable of. But the very statement I am that I am means that we are everything. And when you can allow each experience to just be, and to allow yourself to be in it and embrace it for what it is, or not whatever you want in that moment, and just everything is okay, everything
Mhm.
is allowed, then you're more in alignment with the essence of I am that I am, and you're closer to kind of like the essence of pure unconditional acceptance. And when you're in the essence of unconditional acceptance, that is a very open energy. And that's when your channel fully opens, because it's accepting of everything. And that's when your manifestation potential um, transcends your previously more limited and narrowed perspective. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I feel like I'm in another world right now. Did,
Yeah, no,
did any
I'm
of that
following.
resonate for you?
It does. It does. You're putting words to something that I couldn't put words to. So
I could like
this is perfect.
feel you trying to say something, and I completely interrupted you. So I'm
No,
sorry
no,
about that.
no. No, don't apologize at all. I feel like I needed you to do that because I
I
was
feel
getting
like
lost in it.
so that's what somatic kind of was a doorway in for you, right? To just
Yeah,
experience whatever was moving through you without attaching a meaning to it, and
that's it.
experiencing like the energy of it rather than kind of thinking about of trying to avoid it.
Yes. Yeah. And it's automatic, the judgment of it. Like when I'm experiencing something that's uncomfortable, that's low vibrational, it's almost like there's a unconscious automatic conditioning of that being wrong, that even though I have learned and I have practiced that, like, just accept it or just welcome it or just feel the emotion or just meet it, like it's almost like that becomes its own fuel for my judgment of it too. Because it's like I shouldn't be judging and resisting this. Like there's so many layers that I just find it so interesting how we are just judgment machines.
It's I'm just asking like why. I like to ask why. It's never good enough for me to just have a question
Yeah.
without an answer. And they're
Same.
just saying that's what you're here to experience is these different aspects of who you are so that you can experience them. And it is through experiencing them that you experience your wholeness because you are, I am that I am. You are all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that this kind of lends itself into an interesting conversation around how we put, enlightenment or divinity or our spirit guides on up on a pedestal, right? Looking to them for all the answers. They're more evolved than we are, that I have to look up to them and ask them for all of my guidance. And if I'm not connected to them, then I'm not kind of worthy of their support or I'm without, that help. And they are not above you. They are not better than you. They just have a different perspective of their sense of self because they are existing in a different dimensional reality. And the only difference between you and them is their perspective of themselves. And that's how they can access what you deem to be wisdom, which is just a difference in perspective. Um, and the judgment that we carry throughout this human experience this lends itself to this perspective of who we are. And it's something to almost be cherished because it's not as easily accessed where they are. Does that make sense?
Just for
Because they
me.
see beyond the judgment, so they can't experience the judgment in the same way that we can.
Right.
The experience of your humanity is a gift, people. I think that that's what this comes down to, is we keep searching to escape it.
Mm.
And I do think that that's kind of a nuance that spirituality has taken on is like a means of escapism from the mundane 3D life. And can we just allow the 3D experience to be what you came here to have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's spirituality's manifestation of like what my experience of religion growing up was like if you're having these experiences that are uncomfortable or negative, like not having enough money or not having a good relationship or whatever, it's because you need to give it to God or you need to get rid of it by giving it to God or ask God or just pray to God and he'll make it go away. And then that has come to a version in spirituality that to me it feels like a level up because it's like now rather than giving it to God, it's like just alchemize it in yourself or align yourself with it. Like it feels like a more empowered version of that same thing, but it still has limits.
Yeah.
There's still a limiting experience of, yeah, it is the escapism. Like these experiences that I'm having, I'm not supposed to be having. If I'm having them, it means something wrong about me, or it means that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm not doing the right things. And there's that the nuance that you're speaking to, that there's just a resonance in my body that I can feel that I first reached when I started consuming content by Kyle Cease, who talks about it in this way. And I'm curious if the people that like listen to this can also feel the resonance in their body that comes with just allowing their human experience to be what it is and like meeting everything with acceptance, with curiosity. Like if everything is just like okay, then how do we live from there? Like if we don't feel like all the awareness that we gain of what's going on and how we feel about it and why it could be happening and what it's mirroring to us, if all of that wasn't then being used as like fuel to try to control it or do something about it, then what is it like just to exist in that awareness? And that just feels like a huge exhale to me. of like all of this is true. I This is a reflection of my vibration, and I am, I can create my reality and blah 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 blah. And like, what if I just don't do something about it? Like there's something about that that feels more true than taking all of that awareness and trying to control and do something about it.
Well, I can just feel the resistance of some people listening or watching, being like, how am I supposed to accept something that I don't like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I can't accept it. I want it to change. And that completely contradicts what I want. And there does come along with the idea of acceptance a little bit of anxiety attached, I feel like, where it's really difficult to say, how am I supposed to accept my circumstances when I'm not happy? And the only way for me to change how I feel is to change my circumstances, and I can't accept them if I want them to change. What do you have to say to that?
Hmm.
That's the
Well,
thing that I see come up the most with clients.
yeah. Well, we don't want to accept it if acceptance equals complacency, or if acceptance means it's going to stay there, or if not accepting it means I'm more likely to change it. There's a insight that I had a couple of years ago that I do keep coming back to and learning and experimenting with it in new ways, but it was this idea of like, what if I'm not in control of anything? Like, what if my life just happens to me and I can either have done something through my ego that I can associate I created it, but really like it would have happened anyways. Like, and I don't know if this is true, but I started living like, what if that was true? What if I literally am not in control of any of it? And there's just some times where something happened that I can connect it with I did this, and then it feels like I was in control of it, but it just would have happened anyways. And when I've experimented with that being a possibility, then it feels to me like my own lack of acceptance of something, the idea that that would cause it to change or motivate me to do something about it, there's something about that that doesn't feel like it's 100% accurate or 100% true.
There's sort of an illusion there where if you can continue to be in resistance of the thing you want to change, then the ability to change it becomes easier, or you don't forget about changing it. But there's
Right.
this attachment to the thing, like a specific outcome that's driving that entire sequence, I feel like. And that becomes very difficult to disassemble because it requires you to see that outcome as not an exemplification of your own sense of self-worth. And that's where the work really came in for me, is I saw myself projecting all of my sense of self-worth on. I've done it over and over. First, I did it as a dancer growing up. I wanted to be the best dancer. If I was the best dancer, I was going to feel really good about myself. And then it became more of like theater. And then it became lifting. I had to be the best power lifter. I had to be the strongest one in the gym. I had to be the most muscular one. And then I found myself projecting it onto spirituality. I have to be able to talk to my spirit guides. I have to be the most spiritual person ever. And I found myself like, for it, there was this, I had to change something about me in order to be able to reach this place of inner acceptance. And it took a lot of work to be able to separate the two. And I don't know that that's ever, I don't know that the purpose is to be able to separate them completely, but I feel better when I do. And it hasn't changed. Like my ability to make forward progress in my career, in my personal life, hasn't been affected by my level of self-acceptance in a bad way.
Yeah, that's good to notice. I've noticed the same thing. And it feels like a disruption of everything that felt like it should be true.
I know. If there's this like weird mistrust of it,
Yeah,
you have to build evidence that you're safe, everything's okay. You can keep being okay with yourself regardless of what you do
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're not just going to become a bad person or never accomplish anything or just
right.
like lay on the couch all day. But like also
Yeah.
if you did, like that could be okay too. Like, but I think you have to come to that place of that would be okay too, to or at least open yourself up to that being a possibility of this could happen and can I navigate that? Or can I trust myself to hold that experience with some level of love to lean into it and to start to gain the evidence that we need to trust it more.
What would you like to leave people with from this kind of smorgasbord
Yeah.
of directions that we took this conversation in?
I think that there is such a strong inner guidance system in me that over the years of being more connected to spirituality and exploring it, I've learned to identify what that inner guidance is telling me through how I feel and where something feels heavy and where something just feels light. Or at least that's how I context it, heavy and light. Like I can feel that in my body to know what that means. I don't mean it as a good versus bad. I just mean it like dense, heavy versus like expansive, opening and light. And when it comes to aspects of spirituality that feel heavy in my body, I just try not to take those so seriously. And the ones where they feel really light and expansive and opening, which to me has always been like lessons of acceptance, lessons of like there are no bad feelings, like allowing yourself to feel all of them without labeling them. Um, Lessons of inherent worthiness, of like, I am inherently worthy and good enough and okay and safe, regardless of what I do or don't do or experience or don't experience. Those lessons or those teachings have an experience of lightness in my body. And lessons or teachings of raise your vibration so that you can have what you want. And um, don't think negative thoughts about yourself. Your thoughts create your reality. All of those have had like a tinge of heaviness to them because it has an expectation on it of what I'm supposed to do with it. And even though I think that there is truth to them or there's lessons inside of them that can be very valuable, I prioritize them less, or I've learned to prioritize them less in favor of holding these ones that feel lighter, a little bit more in presence with my reality and how I'm choosing to live and how I'm choosing to hold my life and my experiences. And I feel like that has worked really well for me. And it's feeling really good. And I think it's leading me down a path that I would want to go down anyways, a lot more easily.
I have something similar I was going to say. It's this expectation piece that never felt right, feels right to me. But I think for me, spirituality for me has become an experience of the self. That's how I would define it. And how I experience myself is going to be constantly evolving. And that's the fun part, is to continue to ask questions that allow me to experience myself through a different lens and offering myself a different experience of who I believe myself to be with each one. And the ability to be able to do that without expectation attached has been so freeing.
Mm.
Um, there's this lightness to it that I couldn't access before because there was always a part of me that felt ashamed for experiencing myself through a specific lens. Um, and I couldn't get out of that paradigm because I didn't know how, and I didn't know that it was okay to, unless something changed.
Mhm.
And I guess that's kind of where I would like to leave people, in terms of my perspective on this, which is the spiritual experience is the experience of the self in whatever way the self wants to experience itself in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how like the most powerful spiritual aspects or lessons are the ones that are so like generalized and neutral
Yes, and subtle. Like
and
they're not
subtle.
some like big like quantum
Yeah.
matrix thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I am.
Profound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. This was really fun.
This was really fun.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we will see you. If you've been watching the video and been wondering why Kelly's fanning herself, she is currently in Australia in the dead of summer without air conditioning. Um, what a choice.
Yeah, what a life choices.
Just another experience of herself in this reality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an experience.
Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.